OpenAI deploys its highly anticipated GPT-5.6 family alongside a revolutionary full-duplex voice architecture that listens and speaks simultaneously. SpaceXAI and Cursor weaponized their $60 billion merger to drop Grok 4.5 at half the price of rival models. And Jeff Bezos opens up Blue Origin's cap table for the first time in history to raise $10 billion. Welcome to today's Daily Rundown. I'm your host, Anna. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, professional engineer and founder at JamgaMind from Calgary, Alberta in Canada. Today, we perform a forensic autopsy on the symmetric escalation of frontier labs and the birth of full-duplex intelligence, this Thursday, July 9th, 2026. The temporary stasis in the artificial intelligence market has completely vanished. Today, OpenAI executed a massive product offensive, launching the GPT-5.6 family. The flagship, Sol, has seized the number 2 spot on the Global Intelligence Index, while its smaller siblings, Terra and Luna, deliver unprecedented token efficiency. But the real architectural shift is GPT-Live-1, a full-duplex voice engine that continuously processes inputs, allowing humans and machines to talk, interrupt, and reason simultaneously without clunky latencies. This rollout has met an immediate, aggressive counterstrike from Elon Musk's SpaceXAI. Capitalizing on its recent acquisition of Cursor, the firm dropped Grok 4.5. Running at a staggering 80 tokens per second, this Opus class model enters the market at an aggressive $2 per million input tokens, directly undercutting the operational margins of its closed-source rivals. Let's unpack the data.
For the last 6 months, if you've been watching the AI industry, you've probably felt this lingering sense of, suspension, a temporary stasis.
Yeah, you could almost feel the major frontier labs just holding their breath.
Right, exactly. Just hoarding compute, waiting to see who would flinch first. Well, you can officially exhale because that stasis just vaporized overnight.
It really did.
Welcome to July 9, 2026. Today marks the absolute beginning of what we are internally calling the symmetric escalation.
It is a remarkable collision of deployments, honestly.
Yep.
And for you listening, we're stepping a bit outside our usual cadence today.
We are. We're putting on our hats as forensic venture strategists and macroeconomic infrastructure analysts operating on behalf of the JamgaMind Intelligence Network.
Our mission for this deep dive is to perform a highly clinical, holistic autopsy on today's news cycle. Because, what happened in the last 24 hours isn't just a software update. It's a fundamental architectural shift.
Right. We're going to deconstruct the new architecture of full duplex intelligence. We're going to examine these vicious token pricing wars that just broke out this morning. And we'll map out the massive capital realignments cascading into physical robotics.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is. But before we get into the weeds, a quick mandatory note. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, professional engineer and founder at JamgaMind from Calgary, Alberta in Canada.
Which brings us back to the sheer velocity of the data we're looking at today. I think the best way to frame the mindset you need for this deep dive is to look at Joshua Akeem.
Oh, right. OpenAI's chief futurist.
Yeah, he just announced he is leaving the company after 9 years.
And his parting quote to describe this era, I loved this. He called it a decade where centuries happened.
I really can't think of a better encapsulation. Decades of theoretical computer science stuff that was purely academic white papers just 3 years ago is now manifesting as commercial infrastructure in a matter of weeks.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the blast radius from OpenAI. The GPT 5.6 family is officially live.
Finally.
Yeah, and they've structured it into a very deliberate 3-tier hierarchy. You have Sol, the massive flagship, which just ranked second on the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index, sitting marginally behind Anthropic's Fable 5.
Right.
Then you have Terra, the middle tier, ranking decisively ahead of GPT 5.5. And finally, Luna, the smallest, tying with the GLM 5.2 model.
But the story here isn't just the benchmark scores. It's what they destroyed to get there.
Yeah.
They completely killed off their agentic browser, unified the desktop experience, and seemingly restructured their entire token efficiency pipeline.
Well, the consolidation of the desktop experience is a necessary housekeeping move, sure, but let's look at the actual clinical breakthrough. The leap that fundamentally changes how you will interact with this technology isn't the parameter count at all. It's what they've done with the voice architecture.
Oh, absolutely. They introduced GPT-Live-1 and GPT-Live-1 Mini.
Right. Effectively putting a bullet in the old advanced voice mode. The shift here is moving to a true full duplex architecture.
Which is huge.
Let me translate what that actually means if you're not an audio engineer.
Mhm.
The old turn-based AI conversational models were essentially like using walkie-talkies.
Yeah, exactly.
You hold the button, you speak, you let go, say over, and wait while the AI's gears turn. It was strictly sequential. Audio to text, text to LLM, LLM to text, text to audio.
Very clunky.
Right. This new full duplex architecture is like playing in a synchronized jazz ensemble. The AI can listen, reason, and speak all at the exact same time. It can stay dead silent just to absorb the context of your room, or if you ask it something highly complex, it can silently route that heavy reasoning to the larger GPT 5.5 in the background without ever breaking the flow of your conversation.
And what's fascinating here is the mechanism of how that routing works.
Right.
We aren't doing those clumsy translation steps anymore. The neural network is processing the raw audio waveform natively. But to push back slightly on your jazz metaphor, it's not just about making the conversation smoother.
Okay.
It's about hacking the human brain's evolutionary expectation of social interaction.
Wait, what do you mean by hacking the expectation? Aren't we just removing a 3-second delay?
We are, but that 3-second delay was a massive source of cognitive friction. You see, the human brain is wired to trust continuous, overlapping communication.
Right.
When someone pauses for 3 seconds before answering you, your subconscious flags it as hesitation or even deception. By removing that turn-taking latency, OpenAI is treating this continuous stream of intelligence with immense clinical gravity. In their internal tests, users preferred GPT-Live 3 out of 4 times.
Wow.
But more importantly, the expert science scores. When humans and AI collaborated on complex tasks, they nearly doubled.
Because you aren't constantly losing your train of thought while waiting for the machine to finish typing.
Precisely. You enter a shared flow state. And OpenAI knows how potent this is, which is why they simultaneously deployed strict guardrails. They're ensuring age-appropriate responses for teens and active intervention resources for self-harm. They recognize that a zero-latency, full-duplex AI feels deeply uncomfortably human.
Yeah, that makes sense. But here is where the macroeconomic reality violently collides with the technology.
Oh, for sure.
Because the moment OpenAI made this architectural leap, they walked right into a buzzsaw. The counteroffensive from the rest of the industry was immediate. It seems like software capabilities at the frontier are basically reaching parity.
Yeah, the moat is drying up.
Right. And the war has instantly shifted from who has the smartest model to who has the most ruthless unit economics.
The operating margins are being completely slashed right now. For anyone managing enterprise tech budgets listening to this, you are watching the industry transition from a theoretical capability arms race into a grueling physical infrastructural siege.
Let's look at the most aggressive move on the board today. SpaceXAI dropping Grok 4.5. They built this jointly with Cursor following that $60 billion acquisition. First, the specs. It runs at a blistering flash-level speed of 80 tokens per second. It benchmarks right alongside Claude Opus 4.8 and GPT 5.5.
But the weapon isn't the speed, it's the price. Grok 4.5 is priced at $2 per million input tokens and $6 per million output tokens.
We should probably pause and clarify those terms for a second, just to ground the economics for everyone.
Yeah, good call.
Think of input tokens as reading and output tokens as writing. So if you feed an AI a 500-page legal document, that's input. It's relatively cheap computationally for the AI to just read that.
Right.
But if you ask the AI to generate a 50-page original legal brief from scratch, that's output. The machine is burning vastly more electricity and compute to generate new text. That's why output is always more expensive.
Which is why Grok 4.5's pricing is basically an act of economic violence against companies like Anthropic. Anthropic's Opus 4.8 currently sits at $5 for input and a massive $25 for output. SpaceXAI is offering frontier-level writing and reasoning for $6. And to twist the knife, they made it temporarily completely free inside Cursor and Grok Build.
And it's not just Elon Musk weaponizing pricing. Alexander Wang released Meta's Muse Spark 1.1 into public preview today, too.
Right.
Meta's approach is arguably even more predatory. They are starting developers off with $20 in free credits and then pricing the API at $1.25 for input and $4.25 for output.
That's incredibly low.
Yeah. Wang explicitly said they are targeting OpenAI's dominance in the codex programming space. Though they are keeping it walled off, limiting access strictly to Meta's properties and avoiding third-party aggregators like OpenRouter.
Well, that walled garden approach is deliberate. They're willing to take a massive loss on the compute costs because they want to control the developer ecosystem. And the sheer volume of secondary models hitting the market today absolutely confirms this trend.
Totally. I mean, look at Cognition dropping SWE 1.7, which is actually built on China's open source Kimi K 2.7 architecture. It's hitting near GPT 5.5 scores for a fraction of the cost.
Okay.
You have Minimax announcing a 2.7 trillion parameter model for Q3, which is 6 times bigger than their current flagship. And then ByteDance rolls out Seedream 5.0 Pro. This one is fascinating because it's absorbing what we call the tool layer.
Right.
It isn't just generating a flat image anymore. It offers precision layer editing, native support across 10 languages, basically acting as a proactive creative partner to set the stage for their upcoming video generator.
But look at the through line connecting all of these. Cursor, Muse, Spark, Seedream.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. I want to push back on the premise of AI dominance as we've known it.
Okay, go ahead.
If Elon Musk can leverage a $60 billion vertical integration with Cursor to just gut market pricing, if you can build a model that matches the frontier and you own the custom silicon hardware it runs on and you own the developer interface where people actually use it, isn't the true moat no longer the neural network itself?
That's a great point.
The algorithm isn't the fortress anymore. The moat is just the sheer scale of your compute and distribution infrastructure.
I wouldn't even call that pushback.
Yeah.
I think you've identified the exact macroeconomic shift of 2026 right there.
Yeah.
The neural network architecture is commoditized.
Yeah.
SpaceXAI is using its vertical integration, meaning they control the power, the data center, the chips, and the software to deliberately bleed out the operating margins of pure research labs like Anthropic.
Right.
When you integrate a powerful tool layer like Cursor directly into raw, incredibly cheap compute, you create an inescapable gravity. Well, I mean, why would a startup pay $25 per $1 million output tokens when they can get Opus-level performance natively integrated into their coding workflow for $6? You literally cannot compete on pure software capability anymore. You have to compete on the brutal economics of your silicon.
So if the cost of digital intelligence is in a relentless race to zero, where does all this venture capital actually go to make a return? If the digital tokens are practically free, they have to find a new frontier for value extraction, right?
They do. And that frontier is the physical, unmapped terrain of the real world. Intelligence is now cheap enough and compressed enough that it can be deployed into physical hardware ecosystems at scale.
Which perfectly explains Mistral AI's major launch today. They released Robustral Navigate. This is an 8 billion parameter robotics navigation model.
Right.
Now, 8 billion parameters is relatively tiny in the AI world. It's small enough to run locally on a robot's internal computer without needing a massive cloud connection. And the technological approach here is a complete paradigm shift. For the last decade, robots and self-driving cars have relied heavily on LiDAR, you know, those spinning laser sensors on the roof that map 3D space.
Yeah, the expensive ones.
Exactly. LiDAR is incredibly heavy, power-hungry, and wildly expensive.
Right.
Mistral just ditched it entirely.
They moved to a monocular approach.
Really?
Literally a single RGB camera.
Exactly, like a human eye. It uses a pointing-based method where the AI simply predicts its targets as 2D image coordinates on a flat camera feed, guided by simple language instructions. And it works seamlessly across legged, wheeled, and aerial robots. On the R2RCE benchmark, which specifically tests how well a robot navigates an environment it has never seen before, it hit a 76.6% success rate.
Which mathematically is a tremendous achievement in simulated environments. But we need to juxtapose that sterile digital success with the chaotic high-entropy reality of civic infrastructure.
Yeah.
The digital world is clean. The physical world is defined by friction. And we saw this starkly illustrated today by a severe warning from the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
Yeah, NHTSA Chief Jonathan Morrison issued a very direct safety notice to the self-driving industry. He identified a clear pattern in what he termed a functional insufficiency of autonomous vehicles interfering with first responders.
Right.
We're talking about AI vehicles blocking ambulances, ignoring firefighters, and completely failing to understand the context of flashing lights, smoke, and traffic cones. They specifically cited a late May incident in Dallas where a Waymo vehicle reportedly blocked a fire truck actively heading to an apartment fire.
And, keeping strictly to the clinical facts of that regulatory action, this raises an important question about the fundamental tension of deploying this intelligence. You have highly advanced monocular navigation systems attempting to interpret dynamic, high-stakes environments based on pristine training data. But that data cannot account for every variable of a live emergency scene.
It's basically the difference between logic and common sense. Robostrel's single-camera approach is essentially a human walking through a dark, cluttered room with nothing but a flashlight, trying to navigate purely on geometric coordinates. Legacy autonomous vehicles use a rigid array of lasers and radar, but both systems are failing at the unpredictability of human emergencies. Think about it. A firefighter throws a red flare on the ground and waves a flashlight. A human driver instantly understands the unwritten social contract. That means danger, stop, reroute. But an AI model, processing through a single camera, often interprets that as contradictory visual noise. Are we deploying advanced monocular logic into civic environments faster than our physical infrastructure can actually adapt to it?
That is the critical infrastructure question.
Yeah.
We are trying to force deterministic digital logic into a highly probabilistic physical world. A simulation can teach a model what a fire truck looks like under perfect lighting. It cannot teach a model the fluid, chaotic panic of a burning building.
No, it can't.
Bridging that gap between the simulation and reality requires an astronomical amount of capital.
Which transitions us perfectly into the financial markets today. Funding this massive digital to physical expansion, building custom ASIC silicon chips designed exclusively for AI math, training 2.7 trillion parameter models, deploying physical robotic suites, it requires unprecedented capital restructuring. We are watching a complete realignment of alternative assets in real time.
The sheer scale of the capital moving today is staggering. To understand it, we have to look at Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin.
Right. So for the first time in its history, Blue Origin is opening up its cap table to outside venture capital. They're raising $10 billion at a massive $130 billion valuation.
That's huge.
Bezos himself is contributing $2 billion, which he raised from selling Amazon stock, and the hedge fund Co-Team Management is putting up $4 billion. This isn't just an aerospace fundraising round. This is a direct, aggressive infrastructural move to compete with the newly public SpaceXAI.
Exactly.
They are battling over rockets, lunar landers, and satellite internet. They are trying to own the literal physical infrastructure of global AI connectivity.
And that infrastructural mandate is trickling all the way down the venture capital stack. Look at Paradigm. They formally pivoted their entire strategy today.
Paradigm is historically a crypto-native venture firm.
Right.
I mean, they just came off a massive $22 billion win with the prediction market Kalshi, but today they announced their new $1.2 billion fund is pivoting entirely away from purely digital crypto and going all in on AI and robotics.
Right.
They manage almost $12 billion in assets, and their recent bets are deeply, tangibly physical. Things like Zipline, which does drone logistics, and True Anomaly, a space defraying company.
Because the capital is abandoning pure software speculation, it recognizes that if software is becoming free, the only defensible moats left are physical.
And this capital flood is creating a massive downstream liquidity boom for startups that can bridge that gap. Look at Prime Intellect securing a $130 million Series A today. They are an open-source training startup, and they crossed $100 million in annualized sales in year one.
Wow.
Or look at Monogram, emerging from stealth with a $40 million seed round. This one blew my mind. It's from Udemy co-founder Aaron Bali. They are pitching an iOS app that uses AI to instantly generate user interfaces in real time.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, instead of an app having hard-coded buttons, the AI dynamically paints the interface based on exactly what you need at that exact second, swapping out walls of text for custom UI.
Which is the logical endpoint of software commoditization. The code basically writes itself in real time.
So what does this all mean for you and me? When you look at Bezos dumping billions into satellites and crypto funds abandoning the blockchain to build delivery drones and space defense, it feels like the tectonic plates beneath the tech sector are fundamentally shifting. Is this a genuine structural evolution of the global economy, or is this just the largest concentration of capital risk we've seen since the dot-com era?
I honestly don't think those two things are mutually exclusive.
Huh.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the capital is largely signaling that the era of software-as-a-service dominance is fading. The money is chasing sovereign-level physical infrastructure, custom silicon foundries, power grids, robotics, logistics, satellite constellations. When a crypto fund pivots to space defense, and when space companies are acquiring AI coding startups for $60 billion, you are watching the macroeconomic landscape evolve from a digital information economy to a heavily industrialized, physical AI economy. The risk is immense, yes, but it is proportional to the scale of the infrastructure being built.
To synthesize everything we've looked at in this autopsy today, July 9, 2026 is the inflection point. The AI industry has moved from a theoretical capability arms race into a grueling physical infrastructural siege. It's being fought through the full-duplex architectures of GPT-Live, the flash-level unit economics of Grok 4.5, the monocular real-world navigation of Mistral, and mega-cap venture pivots from funds like Paradigm and titans like Blue Origin.
We are successfully mapping the infrastructure of this new era. But as analysts, we also have to look at what this new infrastructure breaks in the process.
And that is exactly where I want to leave you today. I want to leave you with one final haunting data point from today's news about how this technology is completely fracturing legacy human systems. Let's look at Brown University and an economics professor named Roberto Serrano.
The data from his classroom is a perfect microcosm of a much larger systemic collapse, the collapse of verification.
It really is. So, Serrano offered his students a take-home midterm due to some campus anxieties following a local incident. The historical average for his midterms usually sits right between 65 and 80 out of 100. It's a tough class,
Right.
this take-home midterm. The class average shot up to 96 out of 100. 40 of his 86 students got absolute perfect scores.
Which is a statistical anomaly that immediately signals widespread artificial assistance. The friction of the test was removed by the intelligence available on their laptops.
Exactly. So Serrano realizes what's happening, and he institutes an in-person, fully monitored final exam. Pencils and paper. The result. The class average plummeted to 48 out of 100. 18 students immediately dropped the course. 9 students just skipped the exam entirely, and out of those 27 students who fled the class, 22 of them had scored perfect 100s on the take-home midterm. Serrano exposed at least 50 cheaters in a single class of 86.
The legacy metrics we use to verify human knowledge simply cannot withstand the reality of widespread, frictionless intelligence.
And that is the provocative thought we want you to mull over as you go about your day. As the cost of intelligence races toward absolute zero, and as full-duplex continuous processing AI seamlessly integrates into our digital workflows and our physical environments, the traditional systems we use to evaluate human competence are collapsing. The X-ray machine for human intellect is fundamentally broken. As this architecture scales globally into our hardware and our cities, what happens to the inherent value of human proof of work?
It is the defining macroeconomic question for the next decade.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the architecture of this symmetric escalation.
We'll keep monitoring the network, stay sharp out there, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.